We're having a great time at Real Estate, Real Life. I'm enjoying the questioning aspects of the conference where it really gets you to think about what direction your life is going in, not just from a professional level, but on a personal development level.
Such a great opportunity to meet other investors and people in different stages of their investing career and life, and learn some things, but also mentor others.
Well, actually, for me, the highlight was listening to the story of a couple, I don't recall their names, who just took the leap, started getting their real estate. The elementary school teacher who went half-time, who was a skeptic, because my wife is a skeptic, and I want my wife to talk to them. I want to sit and talk to them so that she can see that it's actually doable and it's not as scary as it seems.
I really enjoy the challenges, the kind of personal challenges to have really quality questions and asking yourself, what are you doing and how can you be better? How can you make a difference in your community? How can you improve your life? And so I just really appreciated that. Given me a lot to think about, and I'm really excited for the future.
Nick and Elaine are extremely genuine people. I think that that's one of the highlights for me, is that in a world of social media where everybody's trying to compare and this and that they're super down to earth, they're super grounded. Their relationship is a great example of what a marriage should be, especially working with a spouse. The content is a great amount of material, from mindset to actual real estate stuff to lending. It's been excellent in that sense. And I definitely am looking forward already, even though this event's not over, to coming back next year, because I've already gotten so much out of it after one day that I definitely will be back.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Q2 2025 performance update. I always wear like all black, and so I'm wearing red, and
I accidentally wore red today as well.
we look cute together.
We're always matching.
I like it. Well, welcome everyone. As always, if you have any questions, you can pop those into the chat, and we do our best to answer those as we go along in the presentation, or to get to those at the end. We want this to be live and interactive, and that's one of the big benefits of coming live, is that you have the opportunity to ask those questions. So please do pepper those into chat. Rachel, our Director of Communications, is also joining us as usual, and she'll be active in the chat. So thank you for being here, whether you are an existing investor, you're considering investing with us, maybe you just want to learn about our operations and apply some of these lessons to your own portfolio. Whatever it is, we are excited that you are here. These are like our favorite calls.
Yeah.
We do just 4 a year. I guess maybe we kind of do 5, because we do like a year end. As well, but it's fun to share, all of the happenings, right? The full-time operation that is the Black Swan portfolio, to share what's going on with you. So without further ado, let's jump in to our slide deck. Maybe a little further ado as we're getting it ready on our computer here. Give us just a second.
It's on the wrong screen. The slide deck is popping up on the wrong screen, so we have so many screens. That's a better screen for it to be on right now. All right, very good. All right. Should be good to go.
Yeah, we should be sharing our slides now. So this is our Q2 2025 update. Our usual disclaimer that during our updates, we do share about past performance. Anything that we share about past performance is the actual performance of the portfolio. Past performance does not necessarily indicate future performance. Any forward-looking statements that we make are our predictions, but are never guaranteed. All investment does have risk, including the potential for capital loss. Anytime you're making an investment decision, you should speak with your advisors, your attorneys, CPAs, whoever is important to you as you're making those decisions.
And just a little bit about us, some Black Swan stats. That's the first time we've headlined it that way. I like the alliteration there. So my wife Elaine and I, we have the privilege to own and operate Black Swan Real Estate, which is a real estate private equity firm. We have over $400 million in assets under management. It's a incredible, closing in on that $500 million mark. We're very vertically integrated, so we own our property management company, our real estate brokerage, we do in-house lawn, snow cleaning, all of the not so sexy stuff that really moves the needle and makes our assets perform. We've raised over $100 million in capital, so we've hit that mark there. That's another milestone. We just updated these here in the last 24 hours.
Yep.
You can go to securefreedomfund.com, check out our latest offering, the Secure Freedom Fund, where you get a 10% fixed rate of return. Our real estate sales team has sold a little bit of real estate as well, closing in on $250 million in real estate sold. They've had a on fire year this year. And then we've done a little bit of ground up construction as well. We just got our certificate of occupancy here less than a month ago, a little over a month ago, with Stonehaven Apartments. So that's a $11.5 million apartment building that we just finished here recently. And we're going to share a few updates from that as well. So a little about us here at Black Swan Real Estate.
At the top of the hour, we shared with you information from our prior hostings of Real Estate Real Life. This is our 4th year of hosting Real Estate Real Life. It is such a joy to bring together our existing investors, folks from our audience, and we really try to create exactly what it is in the title. We believe that the point of real estate investing is to build a big and amazing life. And so during Real Estate Real Life, we do a ton of real estate teaching. We talk about building a portfolio, asset protection, taxes, lending, all of those important things. If you come here in person in Rochester, we have a full day where we do bus tours of apartment buildings. Before people do those, they're often like, I'm not sure I want to, go look at apartment buildings all day. But I'm telling you, the feedback 100% of the time after people have done that day is that they learn so much about investing, about our philosophies, about how we do things very differently, about investing with us. So we warmly welcome you to our 4th annual Real Estate Real Life. It's hosted right here in Rochester, Minnesota. Fly in September 11th. We have networking and cocktail hour that evening. The content is September 12th, 13th, and 14th. And then there's an optional upgrade for a VIP day on Monday, September 15th. You can learn all about Real Estate Real Life at RERL2025.com and use the code Black Swan for $300 off registration. This is going to be our largest year as well, and we would love to have you as well to dive into real estate and real life. This year, we're focusing on compounding returns and all of the benefit that comes from compounding, right? It's called the 8th wonder of the world, and it applies to so much more than finances, right? Compounding your health, compounding communication, leadership, important relationships. All of those things are what make Real Estate Real Life very different than any other conference, and we would love to have you. And if for whatever reason you are not able to travel to join us in Rochester, this will be our 2nd year of offering a virtual experience. You are right there with us in real time in the conference. It's not just that you're watching recordings or something like that. Nick and I have a down screen on the stage, and we can see you live in the Zoom room. We can see your chats. We can see your faces. It is as though you are right there with us. So the virtual portion is on September 12th and 13th when we're on stage doing our content. You'll hear from Nick and I. We have a whole panel of amazing speakers. Last year, the virtual option was absolutely amazing, and we're excited to offer that for a 2nd time. That's also right there at RERL2025.com, and you can still use that Black Swan code for $300 off registration, which makes the virtual option extremely affordable. And I promise you we will deliver 1,000 or 10,000x return on investment, because we cover all the domains of real estate and real life, focusing on compounding growth this year. Nick and I were up until midnight last night.
No lie.
I think it was 12:16 we went to bed planning Real Estate Real Life.
I needed only several hours of sleep last night. So.
And then multiple wake ups from the baby. But I just had like a moment of inspiration of some of the things I wanted to talk about at Real Estate Real Life. And we just got on a roll. We love being with our community and having the opportunity to have that deep immersive dive with you. So whether you join us in person or virtually, we would absolutely love to have you. It's going to be amazing.
This is my favorite. Like, this captures the mood of Real Estate Real Life. It is a very fun, surprising, just improvisational event. Like you were going to learn some things, you're going to have some breakthroughs, and learn a little bit about real estate and little bit about life.
Yeah. One of the questions that came in is, will the conference be recorded? And yes, it will. So if you have a live ticket, you will get access to the recordings. If you have a virtual ticket and you're able to join us, virtually live during that, that's awesome. But if your schedule precludes that, you'll also receive access to the recording. So even if you know you're busy on the 12th and the 13th, go ahead and get a virtual ticket so that you can get access to the recordings. So thank you for that question. Another update Rachel and I have for you is a nudge to take a look inside of your InvestNext portal. That's blackswan.investnext.com. And then from there, you'll enter your username and password. It's very important that you keep your investor information up to date. If you have an address change, a phone number change, an email change, many people have completed the paperwork but haven't gone into the account section of InvestNext. And that's where you put in, like, if you're investing with an entity name, like say a trust or an LLC, making sure your social security number or your EIN is in there. So please do take just a few minutes, shouldn't take you more than say 3 or 5 minutes to log into blackswan.investnext.com, make sure that all of your account information is up to date. And then if you have any changes, like you move or change your email address or anything like that, you can always go in and update that. It's important all of the time, but particularly around tax time. So we took care of all of those changes with our most recent round of K1s, and this is just a good mid-year check-in for you to make sure that everything is up to date in the portal. If you ever need anything from an administrative perspective, your password, any help with InvestNext, those sorts of things, Rachel is there to help you. You can email her at rachel@blackswanteam.com.
Yeah,
All right, let's jump into
Yeah.
the fun stuff.
We've got lots of fun stuff. So we're doing a lot fewer individual property updates, and we've got some pretty big, impactful kind of portfolio-wide things to share with you. As our portfolio has grown, it's getting less and less time efficient to go through individual assets with 4 different properties and over 500 units in flight just this last quarter alone for acquisitions. It's crazy, hard to wrap my brain around. So we've got some big sweeping updates to share with you. Feel free to pepper questions in the chat here. We're here to serve you as much as we can. Let's dive in.
Yeah, so the headlines of Q2, we finished construction of Stonehaven Apartments. We got our certificate of occupancy. We moved people in within 24 hours of having that certificate of occupancy.
Maybe even someone on this Zoom call.
Yeah, we had our ribbon cutting ceremony, which was an amazing time to bring the community together. It was very exciting putting Stonehaven Apartments together over the last year, just watching it come out of the ground. And now people are living there, and we have some more updates for you a few slides from now. As Nick mentioned, I mean, I almost like lost my train of thought when you mentioned how many units we've acquired just in Q2 2025. It feels like it.
Yeah.
This was our strongest quarter for acquisitions ever. So we acquired Meadow Park, Commerce Drive, Rainbow Plaza. We're under contract on Essex Park. A lot of that is because of the status of our portfolio over the last many years. You know, if you've been around, you know that we hit the drumbeat constantly on fixed rate debt. That's allowed our portfolio to mature very nicely over the last several years, get our operations going really well, have investor confidence, which has allowed us to continue to acquire when lots of other buyers have fled the market. We're going to talk today about some of the economic headwinds that are happening, right? It's no secret that real estate is challenging right now, and we're going to share with you some of the challenges that we're experiencing and what we're doing to mitigate those risks and to handle those challenges. And then last quarter, we shared some of the updates that we had in our leasing department, and still just so excited about our leasing and operations performance. We had our best renewal month ever. So as the portfolio matures, really focusing on renewals. So what that means is when we first acquire a building and we're going through, say, like a big renovation project, we end those leases. There's just some sort of natural attrition as folks, move because they don't want to stay with a new property management company. But then when those renovations are complete and folks move into those renovated units, then you shift the focus to renewal and maintaining consistency in the portfolio. In this quarter, our average in-place rent escalation, so this is without a renewal, without any of the costs associated with vacancy or turnover, was 7.97%. So almost 8% in-place rent escalation, and we had a higher renewal rate. So the number one cost in multifamily management is turnover, because you instigate vacancy, you instigate leasing costs, and you instigate turnover costs, right? Paint, fixing things, those sorts of things. So having a really high renewal rate and a really high rent escalation really contributes to the financial strength of the portfolio. And then it's always important to compare that against the market. The market of rent growth nationally is actually negative. It's about negative 0.4%. So our spread is about 8.5% against what's happening nationally. And we have some slides a little later sharing about why we think that's happening in terms of what we're doing to drive those performance and what's also happening in our market. Our vacancy is very low, 4.35% versus 6.7% at this time last year, and then versus a market vacancy of about 8%, right? So anytime you can have your inventory full, that increases the stability and the strength of that portfolio. And then we're so excited to share about Meadow Park. If you're following us in our emails, on our socials, I highly recommend that you catch the updates there. Meadow Park has been our toughest acquisition ever. In a lot of ways,
It's a high bar.
Yeah, it really took Nick and I back to our roots. I'm sure at some point, maybe 6 months or so, as things really stabilize there, we will do a whole webinar about Meadow Park. But suffice it to say, it was our most challenging acquisition ever and our speediest transformation, because we had to work against crime, bed bugs, all sorts of headwinds. And just the faster you're able to get through those challenges, the easier in a lot of ways, right? You just kind of put your head down and run as fast as you can. And that has really been the story since April when we acquired that. I'll let you share the excitement of our acquisition yesterday.
I'm 99.9% sure we're closed on this thing. It's crazy. These large deals, there's so much paperwork. There was a significant loan assumption paperwork and stuff. It takes a long time for that paperwork to clear. But we've told the tenants to not pay rent to the old owner. We've got our staff there on site. We're changing the utility bills and getting the internet set up and stuff like that. So we own it. This was an incredible deal, right? Kind of in the middle of our wheelhouse. We got a phenomenal price on it. It needs some TLC, needs some improvements. So Rainbow Plaza is just it's an incredible asset where I see massive opportunity for us to add value in the near future. Assuming very favorable debt, 4.13% interest rate, and just buying an asset and creating value in a time and a place in the marketplace when there's not a lot of buyers out there. I'm estimating we purchased this asset for probably about 30% less than it may have transacted for just a couple of years ago, and it's incredible to be able to scoop up these deals.
Yeah, very exciting about that closing yesterday.
Yeah.
I shared in one of our recent webinars that we are under contract on Villages at Essex Park. That is 288 units right here in Rochester, just about 5, 6, 7 minutes from our headquarters. We actually drive past it every day to and from work. It's very close to our Georgetown townhomes as well, that we also drive past every single day. Very large community, 288 units, $41 million purchase price, 2.18% HUD loan assumption. That is not a typo. 2.18% HUD loan assumption with something like 37 years left on that loan. So, while there's, so many headwinds in the market because of interest rates right now, being able to lock in 2% interest rate for the next 37 years is going to give a lot of stability to this asset. We will open our capital raise inside of Secure Freedom Fund as we get a little further along in that HUD loan assumption process, so that we know when we're about to close. I estimate we'll open the Secure Freedom Fund maybe about 8 weeks from now, if I had to guess. But guys, it's HUD, it's the government. Like all
We'll see.
True bets are off, but that's kind of the best estimate I can give. It'll be a $16 million raise. First, it'll go to the existing investors inside of Secure Freedom Fund, and then to our wait list, and then to our broader audience. If you think you'd like to join us in the Secure Freedom Fund this fall when we reopen, you can put your name on the wait list at securefreedomfund.com. All the paperwork's there for you to review. Everything's there so that you can review it on your own time, so that when we're open, you're able to make a decision. We tend to fill pretty quickly. That's why we put all of that information out there beforehand. This will be owned by the Secure Freedom Fund. And Nick has a super fun story to share about Villages at Essex Park.
So, if you know us, you know that we believe our path is guided, and we do what we do for reasons, far above and beyond money. If this was just about money, this would not be a good use of our times. This is a low income community, Section 42 income restricted. This is an area where we have a tremendous amount of experience serving, and these assets, they tend to be very management intensive. They're higher touch. They're more difficult assets to work on, and that creates a huge opportunity for us to create value. This particular community is very special to me, though, because I lived here as a young man growing up in Rochester. I actually lived in the southwest corner of the building, so you can see the red box on that diagram there. That is the unit that I lived in when I was living in Rochester on a Section 8 voucher with my mom, and I have a few memories from playing in that parking lot and that sort of thing. And as we were kind of doing our due diligence and kind of reviewing like what the website, I was looking at the floor plans that are listed on the website here, and I found the exact floor plan of the unit that I live in, and there's like the hawk and the falcon, and I lived in the swan. That was the exact two-bed, two-bath unit that I lived in when I was a young man in Rochester. And man, this community, it's an incredible opportunity to serve. It's an incredible privilege. I can't believe now to get the privilege to own the income restricted housing that I grew up in. I don't know, I'm like tearing up just a little bit just talking about it here. We don't specifically target apartment buildings that I lived in or anything like that. This is just what came to be for whatever reason or another. So we're very excited to own this asset and to create massive value for the residents that live in this asset right now.
Yeah, I'm getting a little
Mhm.
choked up too. Last
Yeah.
night as Nick and I were working late and chatting. Nick's mom passed away in July of 22.
Hmm.
And I said, I wonder what your mom would say about this.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you to all of you,
Hmm.
right, to our investors that have allowed us the opportunity to build this portfolio.
And
Nick and I we'll get our composure back and we'll keep doing the slides.
well, to close on a less misty note, so the floor plan, I lived in the bedroom on the left side of the floor plan, and our children's favorite story of all of my childhood stories is the time I blew up the toilet and I got a hold of a waterproof M80 and I put it in the toilet of that bathroom in the top left corner of that floor plan, and I blew up the toilet and it shattered the porcelain and there's water everywhere and stuff like that. And so every time we drive by, which is just about every day, my kids are like, "That's where Daddy blew up the toilet." And yeah, so it gives you some insight as to why income restricted properties are a little bit higher touch. The exploding toilet is not a metaphor. I was a pretty typical tenant, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's coming this fall. SecureFreedomFund.com if you'd like to
Mhm.
join us in the Secure Freedom Fund.
Yeah.
We are honored and excited to again be nominated for Best of the Best, and we ask that you vote for us if you think we're doing a good job managing your assets. Your vote matters. It helps us with visibility in the community, with leasing, all of the things that the world very much thrives on an internet-based economy, and these sorts of things are very helpful for our reputation and our leasing here in the community. So if you'd like to vote for us, we would sincerely appreciate your vote. I'm sure Rachel will pop the link there in the chat. It just takes about 30 seconds to do that. You can vote every single day until I think August 3rd. Residence at Discovery Square was nominated once again for Best Apartment Community. We were nominated again for Best Property Management Company. If we win, that'll be 3 years in a row. So really excited about that. We were once again nominated for Best Place to Work for medium to large businesses, although in that one we go up against the Mayo Clinic, so unlikely to win, but we appreciate the nomination. And then this was our first year of being nominated for Best Customer Service. Really excited about that. I think that speaks to our team and the maturation of our team and the improvement of our systems and processes over the last many years, really trying to deliver an outstanding customer service experience. As Nick and I have built the property management company, we have focused on people who come from hospitality, things like hotels, restaurants, those sorts of things where there's a customer service bent. And we're now seeing that in the outcomes of our resident satisfaction. And then in our nomination for Best Customer Service, that was our first time for that.
Mhm.
So excited about that. We'll likely have the information about whether we won in any of these categories in our next quarterly update. And we appreciate your help with the votes to get us to the top for winning.
And you've probably heard this somewhere on the news, but in case you haven't, there was a recent law change, big part of the big beautiful bill that passed, and 100% bonus depreciation came back. What that means is when we buy an apartment building, we're able to do cost segregation, accelerated depreciation, and bonus depreciation to break down that apartment building into its constituent components. And the shorter lifespan components, like say carpet, we're able to claim 100% of the depreciation on those components in year one. So it drastically accelerates the amount of depreciation that we're able to create for our investors in that first year, and especially in those first few years. It can increase the amount of depreciation we'd otherwise be able to share by triple or quadruple what we might otherwise be able to achieve. This is retroactive to January 2025. So this is a huge advantage for Fund 3 and Fund 4 investors because Boulder Ridge is eligible for this. So this would not impact our acquisitions from say 2024, but the properties that we've closed on here in 2025, all of them would be impacted by this change. This is a huge improvement for the depreciation that our investors will be able to receive, and something that we very much celebrate.
Yeah, very exciting. Let's talk about some of the headwinds in the industry. So Nick and I kind of use this quote from Elon Musk, sometimes in moments of despair, and sometimes when the despair is so thick that we just need to, kind of find a little humor in it. Elon says, being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. It's like eating glass and staring into the abyss because you're constantly up against headwinds, right? You're constantly trying to improve your product, improve your service, improve your pricing, get ahead of the competition, stay ahead of trends, all of those things. And then there's just headwinds, right? And as you all know, there's been a lot of headwinds in the real estate industry over the last several years, principally because of interest rates. They rose, faster and further than really anyone predicted. We had
Before in history.
Yeah, we had all fixed rate debt. We anticipated that rates would go up. I don't think we anticipated that this exactly would happen. But let's talk a little bit about what are the things that are, part of our psychology, right? Like our day to day as we're stewarding the portfolio, as we're stewarding your investor capital, what are the things that we're up against and how are we mitigating those risks?
Yeah, here's just a few posts that you might see in the social media world, right? Like, if you're not aware, there's a lot of other groups out there, perhaps even a majority of groups in our industry that are announcing capital calls or outright capital loss. If you're listening to this in podcast mode, here's one post we've redacted the information because we don't like to call out any individual name or anything like that. But I just got a notification from a passive real estate syndication I'm part of that no investor money will be returned, 100,000 lost, and this is the second lost investment with this physician. They're still offering deals, just letting you know that I've had two lost investments with them. And then much the same for this second update here. Hi, everyone, reaching out to see if anyone else has invested as a limited partner in syndication deals with a certain group, specifically in the DFW market. I recently received a capital call, and it looks like some of the multifamily properties, especially they bought with floating rate debt, are facing challenges and struggling to find a viable exit strategy. Now, viable exit strategy is code for we've maybe lost your money. We just can't figure out a way out of this situation. If you're in a similar situation, what are you doing? Any advice or insights would be greatly appreciated. Just trying to understand the best options moving forward. Thank you so much. I love that they approach this from a place of curiosity. Let's speak to some of those factors that are causing these issues. We just mentioned variable rate debt. During the pandemic, about 93% of real estate deals in the multifamily sector closed with variable rate debt, 7% fixed rate. Our deals were those 7% that closed with fixed rate. Let's talk about taxes for a second. People don't realize this, but taxes, they're the biggest line item. They're called a non-controllable expense because you can't control them quite like you can vacancy or repair and maintenance cost, but it's the number one expense. And there's this very compelling macroeconomic situation that's playing out in every municipality in the country. Normally, the vast majority of their tax revenue would come from their central business district, from retail and office, downtown core properties. That's where the majority of tax revenue would come from. Well, you'd go downtown during the pandemic and it would be a ghost town. And now, you hear stories about like the tallest building in Fort Worth, previously transacted pre-pandemic for $100 million, now transacted for $10 million. Well, that means that municipality has realized a 90% loss in the tax revenue they get from that building. And in fact, that was probably, maybe it cost, 1/10 of their tax take to maintain the infrastructure for that building before. And now the municipality is actually running a loss. It actually costs the municipality more money to maintain the utilities and roads servicing that now somewhat valueless tower than what they're receiving in tax revenue. So it's not just, it went from being like their number one source of profit, so to speak, to being a loss. Now, municipalities have to make that money up somewhere. It's very hard to just raise taxes on homeowners. Homeowners, fight and scream and go to city council meetings and stuff like that. And what that really leaves is multifamily. And multifamily is now kind of carrying the load in the majority of municipalities in the United States. There's some other factors here. So for example, if you hadn't heard, last year was the peak graduation class for high schools in the United States. The peak graduation class. It's a really weird sentence. I'll say that again. Last year was the peak graduation class for high schools in the United States. There won't be more people graduating high school in the United States for the rest of our lives. And that's like a very knowable thing because it takes a couple of decades, to grow a graduating high school class. So in our municipality here in Rochester, Minnesota, which is very normal, they are anticipating a material decline in enrollment, but they still own all this infrastructure and stuff, but they stop receiving as much federal money as their class sizes go down, which means they're facing a financial crisis. Every municipality, literally city leaders reach out to Elaine and I and say, is there anything you can do to bring more children to your buildings? Because our schools are bankrupt and they don't know what to do about it. There's been a 30% collapse in the U.S. fertility rate since the beginning of the pandemic, and it has massive financial implications for the U.S. School system. So what does this mean? Our per property tax bill went up 12% last year. Our per property tax bill went up 12%. Remember, we said that property taxes are your number one expense in multifamily. When your number one expense goes up 12%, even if we're leading the nation, with an 8%, rent growth on renewals, we are sprinting and striving and clawing and scraping to drive efficiency to our assets. But ultimately, we're just kind of running in place is really what it comes down to. This is kind of wild, but we actually pay 2%. Like Elaine and I, we pay 2% of the entire tax levy for our entire county. Every single employee, every teacher, every building, every sheriff, even the salaries of the assessors that raise our taxes, Elaine and I pay 2%. It's staggering because there's been that rebalance where the central business district does not pay tax anymore, and all of that burden has fallen onto multifamily. So it's a tough situation. Concretely, our tax bill at residents at Discovery Square went up by $100,000 last year alone. So that reduced, you put that at a 5% capitalization rate, that reduces the value of that asset by $2 million. Is the effect of the government raising our taxes 12% in a single year. We challenge those taxes wherever we can, but man, oh man, that's a headwind right there. That's a tough headwind right there.
Is that staring into the abyss or eating glass? Which one?
So chewing glass refers to the fact that as the leader of the company, you only deal with the worst problems, like the most unpleasant ones that no one else has the grit to handle. So you deal with the escalations and the lawsuits and the fires and the deaths. And then staring into the abyss is that you not only deal with the most unpleasant problems, but you deal with the most fatal problems. Like if you drop a ball and someone doesn't have a good moving experience, you're not going to go out of business. But if your insurance carrier drops you, that puts you into default on your loan. And when you go into default in your loan in a tough lending environment, well, that could be the end of that building. And so that's a staring into the abyss problem right there. So let's talk about insurance. This is an industry and economy-wide crisis. This is something that we actually talked about when the pandemic began. If you go listen to our webinars from many years ago, from circa 2021, we talked about how we saw construction costs rising, which would result in increased replacement costs. It would be on a many-year latency cycle, and then insurance companies they derive profit from interest rates. So often like U.S. Treasuries and stuff. So as those Treasury yields went down, insurance companies were really squeezed on both sides. I don't think anyone could have anticipated the numerous hailstorms, ice storms that have hit Texas over and over again, the numerous hurricanes that have hit Florida over and over again, the numerous forest fires that have hit California over and over again. And even though there's no natural disaster risk here in Minnesota, that's one reason why we're here, is because it's such a risk protected state. those carriers are still making kind of portfolio-wide determinations saying we're going to exit multifamily altogether. Or in the case of State Farm, our largest insurance carrier, last year they stopped issuing policies over $25 million. And just a few months ago, they stopped issuing policies for properties over 30 years old. So between that Venn diagram, that's like 80% of our portfolio that's now in the future uninsurable by State Farm. No indication they'll drop us, but very, very concerning. Let's talk about some real numbers.
And I want to make sure that we're clear that like we have outright asked them
Yeah.
if we'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
dropped, and they've said no.
Oh, yeah.
But we always have to be a step ahead, right? Like you always have to be a step ahead of these problems. So making plans for that. But
Yeah,
whew,
I went and sat down with our insurance agent and spent 3 hours with him, just kind of grilling him, going over everything for every single policy, and just looked him straight in the eye and said, are you dropping us? I need to know so I can get ready. And he said, absolutely not, absolutely not. So
it really helps that we've never filed a claim. Just like Nick and I have very different opinions on debt, we have very different opinions on insurance.
Yeah.
It is our belief that insurance is for, catastrophic, like a building burning down or something catastrophic. Like we really think of it as catastrophic. And so across our entire portfolio, every single year we've ever been investing, our personal policies, every single building property, our business liability, right? You name it. We have never had a claim. And we're very happy about that. We, kind of similar to interest rates where we're like, man, at 2, like there's just kind of nowhere to go but up. Like it's hard to believe that they're going to go up, like, during like say the pandemic when, there was just so much stimulus. But like if you just look at a number line, like 0 to 2 is not that big, but 2 to infinity is very, very large. Kind of same thing with insurance. We're just like, we're just never going to file a claim. It's there. If we have a building burns down or something like that, it's there. But we just want to have a really good insurance record, a really good insurance reputation, just in case that's ever a problem in the future. And I think it is already a strategic advantage, and it is going to become an outsized strategic advantage as it becomes, it used to be you just called someone, you just called a broker and you got a couple of quotes and
got 20 different competing carriers.
Yeah, and you just, kind of picked based on what deductible you wanted and your price and those sorts of things. And I do believe that in the very near future, it will be a question of like, are you even insurable? And we're just gonna, protect that claim-free reputation as long as we possibly can.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Just talking about some real numbers here to put this into perspective. We just mentioned some very abstract concepts here. Just go back to that slide for a second. So RDS, that's a $36 million asset that we own. Our insurance premium just went up 57% year over year. 57% year over year. It was $17,000. Now it's $27,000. So we're paying about $750 per year per $1 million of property value insured. We're under contract on Villages at Essex Park. That's a $41 million property we're under contract on. You get the seller financials when you look at these properties. They're paying $250,000 for insurance on that property, or about $6,100 per million insured. So they're paying about 800% more than we're paying for insurance. I'm going to say that again. The seller that we're buying from, they're paying about 800% more for their insurance than we're paying. Now, their assets are not exactly, apples to apples or anything like that. But I just want to speak to how ruthlessly we negotiate with our insurance providers, how we hang our hat on not having those claims, and then speak to the risk also. Like there are people out there who are paying 10 times more for insurance than we are, and if our advantage slips so that we're only paying a quarter and not an eighth or a tenth of what other people are paying, it would constitute a huge financial headwind for us to confront. So a couple huge trends in the industry and some examples of how that impacts us.
Let's talk about loan maturities. This is a slide very similar to slides that we've shared in the last, say, 6 to 12 months. Loan maturities is the question in the industry right now, right? Through 2018 to 2022, interest rates were very low. They got very low through the pandemic. The wind was at the back, right? We're talking a lot about headwinds right now, right? Wind was at the back of real estate investors during that period, and a lot of people got variable rate debt. The story from 2022 through 2024, 2025 was about operators servicing that variable rate debt. So as interest rates went up, their mortgage payment would go up. And maybe at first it cut into their cash flow, and then maybe it made it so that they were cash flow neutral. And then they got into negative cash flow, but they had some operating reserves and they were able to dip into that over and over. And then that's where things like capital calls and capital loss comes from. And then an even bigger risk than that is when that loan matures, right? So maybe someone's able to operate it at a mild loss each month and just kind of chug along. Maybe they had some really nice operating reserves. But when they get to the time of maturity and they need to refinance that, if they need to bring a huge cash in injection or they can't sell it for enough to be able to pay off the note and return investor capital, that's where we see catastrophic capital loss in the industry. 2024 was a tough year to refinance, right? Interest rates were high, and Jerome Powell signaled over and over and over again that he really had no intention to lower them. It was thought that 2025 would be better. The Fed had kind of signaled that they maybe intended to start to slowly bring interest rates down. But then with the Trump administration, for better or worse, there's just so much uncertainty that 2025 is not looking like a great year to refinance as well. There's $1 trillion of commercial real estate loan maturities coming due in 2025. $1 trillion. So what has been, sort of a steady drumbeat is going to be like a full-blown cacophony very soon as these loan maturities come true, likely to be a fatal problem for many in the industry. The industry, the Fed, other people, they're trying to do things like encourage banks to do workouts and other things like that, well beyond the scope of what we're going to cover here in this quarterly update. But this is a really important story. We did have a financing risk in 2024. We needed to finance residents at Discovery Square. We were successful in refinancing that in what is called a cash neutral refinance in October of 2024, which was a huge win because we had only put about 10% down on that acquisition. And so we carry about $14 million of equity in residents at Discovery Square. We had a cash out refi of Dakota Townhomes in 2024, a $2.4 million cash out refi. And then something that's really comforting to Nick and I, and should be comforting to all of our investors, is across the entire portfolio, the whole $400 million shebang, we only have $1 million of loan maturity. Did you like that word, shebang?
Yeah.
Did you like that? $1 million of loan maturity. Nick's working on that loan right now. We have several proposals in hand. If heaven forbid we weren't able to get debt, which I don't think is going to happen, but if heaven forbid, like we're liquid enough that we would just pay off the $1 million and that would be that. It would be no material change to the portfolio whatsoever. So very excited about the position that we're in. We have a lot of runway left on our fixed rate debt. We were able to do some strategic refis in 2024. If you look at the chart there at the top of interest rate over time, interest rates went down for just a blip in October of 2024. And that's the moment that we pounced on refinancing residents at Discovery Square. Again, outside of the scope of this presentation, but you can look for things on YouTube. Maybe we'll do a future community power hour on it. Cash out refi timing is extraordinarily strategic. It's not just like, oh yeah, I'll refi in 26. It's watching on a daily basis, communicating with your bankers, deciding, are you going to have the loan against the 5-year treasury, the 10-year treasury, a different metric? Like what's the one that's sort of most favorable for lending right at that moment? And then timing it down to days, weeks, like really, trying to hit right when rates are at their relative nadir. And we were successful in doing that with residents at Discovery Square. And that's what we've done all the way back to 2011. As when we started investing, it's not that rates were always low in the entire time we've been investing. So we've been through this cycle before. Not as dramatic as what is happening now, but we have muscle memory around timing these cash out refis, and very pleased that we have, essentially zero loan maturities in 2025.
Yeah. Another, maybe it's a headwind, maybe it'll become a tailwind. We'll see. It's certainly a piece of uncertainty. It's a market dynamic that's difficult to grip with. And that's this Trump versus Powell kind of dynamic that we're seeing play out in the public sphere. Trump's calling for a 3% rate cut, trying to get Powell out of office, creating this whole dispute over the $2.5 billion, Fed remodel. Ultimately, no matter what happens, whether Powell is ousted or not, each month that goes by between here and when his tenure expires here in less than a year, what he says will have less and less impact on like treasury rates, forward-looking interest rates, and what Trump says or Bessent says is going to have more and more impact because it'll indicate that it's possible policy could change in the future. Now, the FOMC chair does not, single-handedly determine rates, right? So just if Jerome is gone, there's still a whole board of governors and stuff that has that. But there's a lot of policy, items, a lot of knobs and switches that can be turned here. One critical piece of advice you might kind of take to heart is don't ever listen to anything Trump says.
It's nauseating.
Yeah,
and it's wrong.
It's all, yeah. Just look at what he does. Look at the actions that he takes, because those are going to tell you what Trump really feels. And in this case, right now the Fed is they're selling short bonds, or the Treasury is selling short bonds. That's something that Trump has control over. Doesn't have control over the Fed, and they could be selling a mix of 1 year, 5 year, 10-year, 30-year bonds like they usually do. And what they're doing is they're selling a lot of 1 year bonds right now. They're selling a lot of 1 year bonds right now, which means that they are planning on some knobs and switches being turned on the U.S. economy sometime in the next year, where interest rates will be significantly lower and it will be much cheaper for the U.S. government to borrow in the future. Now, my crystal ball is just as broken as everyone else's, and our business model is not predicated on hope that rates go down.
Mm-hmm.
We'd love it if they did. It would be very helpful if they did, but
it would be very enjoyable.
It would be very pleasurable if rates went down, and rates should have gone down already. It's, in fact, all this bluster has caused rates to stay higher for longer. All these tariffs and everything like that. Also, one thing to note is that the long-term debt cycle is incredibly predictable. So if you can, I recommend reading How Countries Go Broke by Ray Dalio. We love following Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett and Ray Dalio, and just incredibly wise people who've been through a few economic cycles and have some wise words to share. And the process, the policy changes that happen, the way interest rates are manipulated, the way currency is created, it's a very predictable pattern that happens about once in a generation or so, once every 70 years or so, and it happens over and over and over again. It's an incredibly predictable thing, and we're not making any political statements here. These are economic statements. This is the big debt cycle that countries go through. So if you can, I recommend checking that out. Great book to help you understand how to be prepared for the future. Suffice it to say, owning hard assets that are indexed to inflation, that are backed by paper debt, is the strongest possible position to be in when a big debt cycle kind of comes to fruition, when the government has to start printing its way out of a corner. The joke is that in the financial world, you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the person next to you, right? And in this case, it's the U.S. government. The U.S. government really cannot afford for interest rates to remain high, because it's already our number one expenditure is interest on the debt. And that's a dynamic that's changed just since the pandemic, basically, because government spending ramped up so quickly. So the outcome it's unfortunately inevitable. It's a very bad outcome, but we need to have this knowledge and understand how these cycles work and make sure that we're positioned for success when those cycles do finally turn.
Yeah, we have a couple of examples from our actual portfolio in the next couple of slides, but we got a question from Joey. It's kind of a long question, but the sentiment of the question is like, hey, this quarterly report's a little bit different than usual. It feels maybe a little more pessimistic. Like, why are you sharing this? We have a couple slides coming up that's going to kind of close this loop, and I just encourage you to stick with that. There's good news ahead. But it's so that you understand our decision-making process, right? Particularly with funds 1 through 4, right? Where those are, you get into that fund and you're in it for the next 20 to 25 years through that entire hold. There's no mystery that there will be good years and bad years across a 20, 25-year hold period. And it's always been my belief that when folks invest with us, what they're really investing in is our decision-making algorithm, right? How are you going to behave when things are good? How are you going to behave when things are tough? Who are your influences? How are you learning? How are you staying a step ahead of these headwinds? And so we wanted to share these things so that you understand this is what we're facing these days, right? Like, it's fun to do renovations. It's fun to do acquisitions. It's fun to do best of the best. It's fun to do parades and all of the things that we share and that we do get the pleasure to do in our quarterly updates. But we think it's important for you to understand that we're not unaware of the headwinds, right? We're not like blissfully ignorant, right? We don't want people to think that we're sharing reports that are so optimistic that we're just like head in the sand about the fact that we are running against the wind as fast as we can. We want people to feel confident that we're thinking through these things. They're top of mind for us. We're spending time on them. We're working with our advisors. We're talking with each other, with our coaches, right? Anyone that can help us as we make these decisions, on behalf of our investors. And so that you feel a level of confidence in how we're handling these things. So that's why we're sharing these things. And again, stay for a couple of slides. Another question came in kind of right around that same time. It's the question we always get around return of capital for funds 1, 2, 3, and 4. Stay tuned. We've got a slide coming up for that. But let's talk about two actual examples in the portfolio. The first is Hampton Townhomes. It's a small deal, and I like that it's small because it's very knowable, right? Like anyone on this call could likely own this asset by themselves, completely outside of a joint venture or private equity fund. This is owned inside of Fund 2. It was purchased a little less than 3 years ago for just $1.55 million. It's 12 townhomes. It's a very, very small community. We put $250,000 down, and we had a very favorable seller carry as well. So one of the things that we were doing in 2022 and even into 2023 is we would get seller carries for 0% with no payment so that we could maximize the size of Fund 2. Fund 2 is a $30 million fund that owns 9 assets, which is a lot of assets. So this was something we did quite a bit in 2022 and 2023. So we put $250 down. We spent about another $100,000 on renovations. That came from a construction loan, so that wasn't from cash. And it's worth about $2 to $2.2 million today. So we're sitting on quite a bit of equity in this property, despite the fact that there's price declines in the industry, and that's because of the renovations, right? When we acquired something that was in such physical disrepair, even though there's downward pressure on prices in multifamily, when you do a big renovation, that kind of boosts you up and can often boost you up, kind of through that downward pressure. So we have about $500,000 of equity in this fund that's owned by, or in this property that's owned by Fund 2. So essentially we've tripled our money in less than 3 years because of that equity that we've created. It's about a 50% annual rate of return. It's also generated about $41,000 of cash flow in the last 12 months, which is a 16% cash on cash rate of return. So all of these numbers are wonderful, right? This is exactly
home run deal.
Home run, right? This is exactly the performance that you want on all of your assets, right? This is an asset that's in Fund 2. So right now we're working on new debt. This is the tiny little $1 million loan maturity across the entire portfolio. Our current debt is 5%, and we're looking at refinancing into 6.75%. Our current debt is a 25-year amortization, which means each monthly mortgage payment is a little bit lower, and we're going to refinance into 20-year amortization, so the monthly payments will go up a little bit. So it goes from about $41,000 of annual cash flow to essentially zero because the debt service kind of eats up that cash flow. We have so much equity in this building. We're so protected. We have enough reserves and enough cash flow to be able to service even this higher debt. We're going into another round of fixed rate debt, so we don't have any additional risk beyond this refi risk. We're not like, okay, well, we're at 6.75, but a year from now, if rates go up, it'll be 7.5, and then we'll be cash flow negative. We're at kind of the worst it can get, right? We're at kind of the worst it can get, which is getting to low cash flow with a staggering amount of equity. We have an indefinite hold period, and that's always been our business plan, and it will continue to be our business plan. And it takes time for interest rates to come down so that we can unlock that equity. The interesting thing is rates only need to go down by less than 2%. So sometimes when people hear us talk about rates going down, they might think that we sort of have our head in the clouds and like, oh, rates need to go back down to 2020 levels or 2021 levels. That is not at all what we need. We need like a 1% reduction, a 1.5% reduction. Trump's calling for a 3% reduction. Is he going to get it? Who knows? If he got even a third of that, we would be able to unlock staggering amounts of equity across the whole portfolio, not just Fund 2. This is just one example. So with very reasonable market normative fluctuations in interest rates, we just have to hold on and we just have to have patience. And we're at kind of the nadir of the risk, right? Risk is at a relative high right now, and we're still in a really, really good, secure position in terms of cash flow and equity. So that's a simple one because it's small, right? $1.5 million, $2 million after the renovation. Let's talk about residents at Discovery Square. That one's a little harder to to wrap the mind around because it's larger, but we've talked about this story quite a bit over the last couple of years. So hopefully this really helps to tie this story together.
Yeah. So we bought this property a little over 2 years ago. That's another thing, I guess, that we've noticed in some of the feedback is people maybe think that we're further into our business plan. We're more years into that business plan than we are. I think it's been a long time. They call them Trump years or call them economic downturn years or whatever they are. People are like, hey, we've been in this thing for 5 years. No, we bought Residence at Discovery Square a little over 2 years ago.
April of 23.
April of 23. So that's where we're at in that business model right now. We stole this property. We got an incredibly low purchase price on it. We put a tiny down payment on it, and then we put $3 million down. We put less than $2 million of additional capital into it to add some units to convert the commercial space and residential space. So all in our all in investment on this property was about 30 million, 5 million of cash. It appraised for 36 million less than 18 months after we bought it. So that would add up to like a 70% annualized rate of return. Just a staggering home run deal. And it's unheard of to turn a ship this big that quickly. So Hamptons, you can turn that around. And again, we've had that asset less than 3 years. And we realized an insane turnaround on that asset. RDS, we realized an incredible turnaround on that asset despite its size in a very short period of time. We went ahead and put 3-year debt on that. So believe what we do, not what we say. We could have gotten 5-year debt on that asset. But we have a belief that within the next 3 years, there will be another refinance opportunity on that asset. And on Hamptons, by the way, we could have gone with a debt option that was maybe a little bit easier in the short term, but would have locked us in for a longer time frame. It would have had a bigger prepayment penalty and stuff. We went with the short term pain for the long term gain on Hamptons, and we did the exact same thing on Residence at Discovery Square as well, because we have a belief that there's going to be a very significant refinance opportunity on that asset in 2027, and we didn't want to have to wait until 2029 to be able to refinance that asset without a significant penalty. In the current environment, in the current financial environment, it is difficult for us to realize like a significant cash out refinance on the asset. However, we think that there will be an opportunity to do so in the foreseeable future, and we're structuring our debt and everything that we do to be prepared for that. A trend that kind of Hamptons and RDS share, which is one reason why we're talking about these things today, is that cash flow is declining on these assets. So we're in a really safe position on these assets in terms of our debt structure, in terms of where we believe our long-term equity position is. But these swings in taxes, insurance, and other factors, they erode cash flow. And then RDS also, we wound up our short-term line of business. Mayo started their $7 billion construction project, or I'm sorry, 7-year, $5 billion construction project here, and they've dialed back their patient scheduling. It reduced the number of patients and stay guests that are showing up, along with headwinds for like the Airbnb kind of climate nationwide. So we're seeing cash flow erode at this asset due to these headwinds that we discussed, and we feel incredibly optimistic about this asset. We know on appraisal we have $14 million of equity in this asset. This is an insane home run deal, and we look forward to where we're at in the very near future on this asset today. So we're trying really hard to use multiple examples to communicate a nuanced picture.
One of the things that I didn't realize was we were putting the slides together. There's a benefit to speaking through the slides. We hear different things. So both of these assets are owned by Fund 2. Residence Discovery Square is owned half by Fund 1, half by Fund 2. But Fund 2 is a $30 million fund. And across just these two assets, that's at least a 30% return of capital. And keep in mind, Fund 2 has 9 assets, right? So we're so far ahead in terms of equity. We just need a little hair of interest rates to come down. Nick's on the phone with our bankers like every day. If you look at his email, probably 80% of them is about lending. And we've always beat that drum. We've always said it's the deal and the debt that makes the magic. When debt was so easy that you could literally just like throw a dart and get 2% interest rate at any bank anywhere, everyone thought, oh, it's just the deal. No. It's always been the deal and the debt. Debt's just getting so much more emphasis right now because it's the hard part. The deals are actually pretty easy. If you've got the cash and you can buy them, the brokers are calling, the sellers are calling. The debt is the harder part, but it's always been that way. You can go back to early 2021 when we started our YouTube channel and we shared some of that. In fact, we have some slides from 2021 to share.
So as we start to kind of close out this discussion, and we hope this serves everybody. I know this is a point of curiosity. One person asked a question about that we're gonna speak to here in just a second. There's a Warren Buffett quote, predicting rain doesn't count, building arcs does. And we are unbelievably proud that we have built a $400 million arc in the last 5 years. And I mean, privately, we kind of regret that we didn't build a $500 million arc or $1 billion arc because we knew the market was high. And there was a time when there was tens of millions of dollars on our wait list, and it seemed like prices were high and it was not a great time to be buying everything we could. But we structured things in a really safe way so that it would be extraordinarily difficult for us to lose capital, so that we'd be positioned for the water to come in and the water to go out. And we're so glad that we made the decisions that we made, that we built this $400 million arc. So we've talked a little bit about whether or not we think the rains are going to come or go here in the next few years. But the way we structured funds 1 through 4 set us up for success, kind of regardless of what the rains do, because we built the arc.
Yeah. Let's address this question head on. We get this question probably once a week or so.
Yeah.
So happy to address it in our quarterly update. Someone emailed this in and they said they weren't able to make it live, but could we answer the question? Do you still anticipate a 100% return of initial investment around the 5-year mark for each fund? And my answer is right here on the slide. The short answer is yes. As Nick mentioned a little earlier, I think sometimes people forget how young these funds are. Fund 1 is our oldest fund, and it was born in December of 2021. So it's not even 4 years old yet. It's about 3.5 years old. Fund 2 is about 2.5 years old.
Fund 1 made its last acquisition in April of 2023. Our oldest fund made its last acquisition in April of 2023. And Fund 2 is making an acquisition tomorrow, one of our last Riverview units. So yeah, I think people often forget how young these funds are. They see CNN and they're like, oh my God, it's been 5 years. What's going on? No, it's not been 5 years.
Yep. This particular investor that sent this question in asked about Fund 3. Well, Fund 3 is only 14 months old. So it'd be like going to a pediatrician with a 14-month-old and saying like, is my child going to know their ABCs at kindergarten? Probably, because most children learn their ABCs in kindergarten, and I don't see any, concerns with this 14-month-old, but let's focus on their 14-month-old, developmental milestones. Are they walking? Are they babbling? Those sorts of things. So we control and optimize what we can: insurance, vacancy, leasing, maintenance, repairs, construction, all of those sorts of things. We optimize things that are a little out of our control, but that we have some influence over, like say lending, or I'd probably put insurance, more in that bucket. And then we manage market dynamics as best as we can. And we've always known, we've been investing for 14 years now, like there's good years and there's years that are a little tougher. And across a long hold period, there's going to be good years and years when things are a little tougher. If this is sort of the worst it gets, like this is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
The law of gestation is a natural law, right? We understand the law of gestation in terms of pregnancy, right? A baby is conceived, 9 months later it's born. In that time period, there's exponential growth, right? For funds 1 through 4, distributions were never meant to be linear. And I think maybe people are a little nervous about distributions in funds 3 and 4 are very, very young. We'll address those separately. But they were always meant to be that way. Small distributions in the beginning after the renovations stabilize. And then there's a bang, right? There's a birth, right? The law of gestation. And then there's a large distribution that leads to return of capital. So there's nothing in our modeling that has us worried about the predictability of our funds. We have done hundreds of cash out refis. We have done this business model hundreds of times with our own capital before we ever worked with passive investors. Our typical timeline was about 2 years. When we created our fund and we marketed our fund, we padded it to say about 5 years because we knew we didn't want to say about 2 years and then we just can't sleep at night because we're like, oh my gosh, how do we meet those expectations, despite changes in the market. So from the very creation of Fund 1, when we said, about 5 years for initial return of capital, and it's a 50-50 split after that for an indefinite hold period in that infinite rate of return, we had already built in the idea that we knew that some years would be good and some years would be bad. And here we are, and things are really good. The funds have a tremendous amount of equity. if it's my belief, and this isn't a political statement, I think most people would say this, if Trump would just calm down with the uncertainty, tariffs or not, immigration or not, all these different things, right? If some of that uncertainty would just calm down, rates would have probably come down already. And, we shared about the short bonds and some of the other things. It's extraordinarily unlikely that rates won't come down at least a hair. And that's all we need to unlock the equity. And we've got a lot of time left. We've got a lot of time left on Fund One, even more time left on Fund Two. Fund Three is only 14 months old. Fund Four, I think, is not even a year old. I think it's like 11 months old. So we have these little babies.
And it's got a brand new apartment building with
It's a brand new
certificate
apartment.
of occupancy in it.
We have these little babies, right? And we have a couple toddlers. And we're always here to answer your questions, right? You guys can always email us, email Rachel, all of those sorts of things. But asking us about the kindergarten outcomes of our babies, we're going to say things are as we predict. Are there headwinds? Yes. Is there uncertainty in the market? Yes. Are we worried that these toddlers have a developmental delay? No. I hope that makes sense. I hope that that's a lot of you are physicians, parents, right? Maybe that's like a more tangible way to wrap your mind around this than talking about returns and projected returns and those sorts of things. It's very top of mind for me, right, Nick?
Yeah.
And I have 5 young children, so we're always thinking about development and those sorts of things. But there's the answer in just a few minutes. There's the answer to your question for funds 1 through 4. Do we anticipate return of capital around the 5-year mark? Yes.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
I thought that was absolutely beautiful. A technical detail I'd throw in there. So like, John asked, are there plans for a fund 5? When investor demand is there for it, like we are pushing Secure Freedom Fund right now, because that's where all the demand is. We have like $20 million on our wait list right now for Secure Freedom Fund. Investors appear to really want certainty right now. We're happy to deliver that. And the funny thing is, if there was a thing I might do differently, we maxed out our leverage by putting like $3 million down on a $27 million deal at RDS to maximize the amount of assets that went into that fund, because that would generate the best long-term return for that asset. But any real estate investment, you can put a bigger down payment and that will increase your cash on cash rate of return. I'll say that again. Any real estate investment, generally speaking, you can put down a bigger down payment and that will increase your cash on cash rate of return. So you'll notice the deals that we're buying in Secure Freedom Fund, we're putting down like 5 times more, as a percentage than deals in Fund 1, 2, 3, and 4, because our goal is to maximize our cash on cash rate of return so that we can make those 10% payments, even though that's going to really aggressively handicap our total annualized rate of return. So we'll have a much lower total annualized rate of return Secure Freedom Fund, but a much higher cash on cash rate of return. So those are decisions any investor can make in terms of how they want to structure their debt. For us, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. We're happy to serve our investors in whatever it is that they want. I can tell you that our investors in Secure Freedom Fund, they really do get a lot of peace or certainty from that investment in Secure Freedom Fund. And then there's a question, is there an opportunity to exit Fund 1 and 2? There is no liquidity option built into that. That's intrinsic to the way those deals were structured. And then Secure Freedom Fund does have a redemption option. You can ask for your money back anytime. So again, we're kind of tailoring our product to meet the market demands. And then if the market demands change, which I'm guessing they will as soon as there's not doom and gloom on the front page of CNN. We'll probably have a fund 5 to meet investor demands at that time.
We pulled up a fund taken directly, a slide taken directly from our Fund 1 launch in December of 2021. We are big believers in radical transparency, and maybe it's more obvious now, but this industry has not had radical transparency over the last several years. Lots of obfuscation around GP fees and splits and all of those sorts of things. And so we put this slide exactly in our Fund 1 launch. What if things go poorly? I don't think things are going poorly. I think things are going well. I think there's a lot of headwinds, but I think things are going well. But let's kind of readdress this right now, 3.5 years later, when people are worried about.
And by the way, go poorly is Nick and Elaine die. Like,
I think things are pretty.
I think we've got a pretty good list right here.
It's the fan.
That's right.
But that's not polite.
Yeah.
I also have like a huge shout out to Rachel, because these were our slides in 2021, and our slides are much better. But Nick, why don't you speak to this slide from our Fund 1 launch, this blast from the past?
So we said, as we were launching this fund, rates are going up, guys. That's why we don't have all this fee load and prefs and escalating waterfalls and stuff like that, because rates are going to go up and we don't know what's going to happen. And so what happens if rates go up, which it's very likely they will, we're going to make sure that we have strategic timing for our refis. We have like say 5-year debt with prepayment penalties that are affordable, so we could easily refinance in years 3, 4, 5. That's exactly what we did. Let's say that cap rates go up, which they have. We protect that with vertical integration with our in-house property management. What if capital partners are not protected? We're protecting our capital partners because 100% of the profit goes to y'all. You can talk to our accountants, and they're always screaming at us because we're not generating profit from our property management company for managing all these assets. It's actually, when we talk to our lenders, they're like, why aren't you generating more profit from your property management company? Because we want to put the needs of our investors first. Our entire structure is meant to keep our incentives aligned. And then let's talk about a market crash. I would say the current situation, it doesn't quite qualify as a market crash because even though foreclosure rates for multifamily were higher last month than ever before in history, those foreclosure rates are still like 0.1%. They're extraordinarily low. And even though the vast majority of multifamily syndications out there that were put together in the last few years are probably underwater right now, not very many of them are actually transacting and realizing a loss because people know values are down and everyone's just waiting for the market to turn around for interest rates to come down. So values are down, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a market crash. But ultimately, we're not as sensitive to that because our business model is not predicated on a sale. We don't have to sell. We can hold that asset and wait for conditions to improve. We could sell if for some reason Blackstone pulled up a dump truck of cash. We were doing like a thought experiment on that yesterday. We're not quite there
We
yet.
always could sell, but we don't have
Yeah.
to. And optionality is really important, right? That's what I
That's
taught
right.
in the community power hour last year is any deal you're doing, not just a real estate deal, any decision you're making in your life, you should be thinking about optionality. We have extraordinary optionality that our business plan is to hold indefinitely. If at any point an amazing price comes through, we're going to evaluate, is that the best decision, right? Knowing all the tax consequences and those sorts of things. But it gives us so much protection.
Yeah. Cash flow positivity, we are exquisitely sensitive to that. You can ask anyone on our team that's on this call right now. On Monday, I did a pop quiz with our entire team where I name a property, and they had to tell me if that property was cash flow positive or not. I'm not making that up. I expect that our cleaners, our maintenance people, our leasing agents, they know. I mean, we've got a lot of properties in the portfolio. They should know if each property is cash flow positive or negative right now. That should be in their DNA. That's how laser focused we are on cash flow positivity in our portfolio, especially right now. The goal we set at our big team retreat was to increase our portfolio wide cash flow by 600% this year. By 600% this year, we're on track to maybe triple it. Getting to 6x, maybe not. We'll see. I think we can get there. And then Nick and Elaine have not yet died, but even if we did, we have very, very ample provisions in place. In our line of work, you unfortunately do deal with death often, and so it's something that we're very prepared for. So I love that you threw that slide in there. It's
fun.
walk through memory lane. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about distributions. Both Fund 1 and Fund 2 are doing monthly distributions. The PPM was always written for quarterly distributions, but we know folks like monthly distributions. So we've been doing that. 18% has been returned in Fund 1. About 4.3% has been returned in Fund 2. Fund 3 and Fund 4 are about 15 and 11 months old. They're our youngest funds in these legacy funds and the numbered funds. We anticipate that distributions are going to start in early 2026. We might be able to eke out a distribution in Q4 of 2025. We're just letting the dust settle on those acquisitions, right? We've had big acquisitions in those funds.
Yeah, a month ago and 2.5 months ago.
Yep. And then building Stonehaven Apartments, we just got the certificate of occupancy, but things are looking really good in those funds. So likely to start distributions, and that's much earlier in the timeline, right? We anticipate distributions start around 2 years. So if we're able to start them at, say, 1.5 years, we're ahead of the schedule on Fund 3 and Fund 4. And then the Secure Freedom Fund has that monthly distribution option that investors choose if they want that option or if they want to allow their distributions to compound monthly. We've never had a capital call. We've never had capital loss. We have nothing whatsoever, not a single little blip in any of our radar that indicates that either of those things are going to happen. All investment has risk. When we look ahead, when we think about all the things that we just shared with you over the last hour or so, even with all of those headwinds, there's nothing that we see that indicates any risk of capital calls or capital loss. Whoever mentioned it about, this is like a different quarterly report. I'm glad you brought that up. Our hope was that that it would be different, right? That it's a different way of thinking about things. Like we've shown rent growth, we've shown vacancy, we've shown renovations. We do have some of those slides. If you're able to keep hanging with us here, we'll go through those pretty quickly. But as I said, when I addressed that question, we want you to know our decision-making algorithm in good times and bad. And just like any relationship, right? A marriage, a friendship, whatever, like the relationship is forged when things are tough. And this is when we seek to earn your trust, when we seek to perform for you. It's easy to perform when everything's easy, right? It's harder to perform when things are hard. These are the things that we're up against. And that's our role in the relationship, right? We're the general partners. We're the ones that eat glass and stare into the abyss because you place your trust in us, right? So we're stewarding your
ride
capital.
shotgun for that today.
Yeah, you get to watch the webinar and then click end and go off on your day. And you all are doing hard stuff too, right? That's how you earned the capital that you placed with us. But these are the things we're taking care of in the portfolio.
Yeah. Another way to think about that is that Hampton's example. I love how understandable it is. Our biggest concern is the erosion of cash flow, like that we're going from 41K of cash flow to zero, but the value is still 100% protected. So that's why we have the outlook that we do, that like there's headwinds, but we feel really good about our equity position in all of our assets.
Yeah. This is probably a good time to address the question, what happens if interest rates don't decrease? Because then the presentation kind of shifts after this. So let's address that question.
So pretty much the whole portfolio is going to look like Hampton's, right? Where we have some legacy debt that's at a lower interest rate. It resets to a higher interest rate. We've driven, NOI growth and stuff like that, but then the debt service catches up to that. So we'll be in a position where it's very difficult for us to make incremental distributions because, the portfolio is no longer cash flowing, but it's not cash flow negative. And we're basically in a holding pattern until either NOI will grow year over year, or we get into a position where we can strategically refinance. Now, over time, the loans pay down. We've had 8% rent growth this past year, 7.9% just on renewals alone for June, our best month ever. So at some point, that will create some opportunities for us, and it compounds very quickly, right? If we were able to sustain 8%, I'm not saying we can because that's a pretty insane number, but let's say we sustain that for just 3 years, that'd be 24% net revenue growth on our existing portfolio. Well, that would get you to a full cash out refi very quickly. So that's what that would probably
There's always the option to sell.
Oh yeah.
Right. We just talked about optionality. You can sell some of the assets to generate some liquidity. That's not the plan. The plan is we've never sold anything, but there's lots of, plan D, E, F, right, all the way down. So good question. All right. We went a little longer on that period of the presentation, but I think
seemed like people liked it.
Yeah, I think that was good.
Good comments coming in.
We talked a little bit about renewals and rent growth already. Our rent growth year over year is 7.97%, and that's just from renewals alone. New leases, right, where there's a turnover or a renovation, our year over rent growth is even higher than that, which is what you would expect, right? If you put in new cabinets and countertops and those sorts of things. We have laser focus on this. Nick is very, very, very involved in the revenue generating side of our business, and he personally reviews every single renewal. We have a person on our team who handles all of the renewals. We talked in the last quarterly report about how we changed the structure for our leasing agents,
There's Laura. She does the renewals.
We love renewals.
We sing your song every quarter.
Well, we love you, Laura. Everyone should pop into chat. We love you, Laura, because she is processing hundreds of paperwork, back and forth questions. Are you renewing? For how long? Are you adding a boyfriend or a girlfriend? Do you have pets, right? Tons of work. She drives a staggering amount of portfolio value to our investors. So thank you, Laura. Let's talk about rent growth. This is something that we share in all of our quarterly updates. Things are starting to stabilize, right? As you come out of that heavy renovation phase, right? You expect a staggering rent bump if you go in and you change the flooring and the cabinets and the counters and the light fixtures and all of those things. And then from there, you're working mostly on market changes. You can bring effort to it, right? You can bring things like marketing. How does your leasing team work? Do you answer the phone, right? You can bring all of that sales force to it. But things are exactly where we would expect for rent growth. We're very pleased with rent growth across the portfolio, both here in Rochester, in our greater Minnesota portfolio, and in our Tacoma portfolio. So you can take a look at all of these tables, more up close, either in the YouTube replay, or we put these in the brochure, the PDF brochure that goes out. So that all of that is there for you to take a look at. We have completed our short-term rental wind up. We shared the wind up in our last quarterly report, and I think maybe even the one before that. We spun up 60 short-term rentals in 2023 and 2024. We had some vacancy across the portfolio as we churned a lot of renovations out, right? We essentially had delivery of a lot of units, and that led to escalated vacancy. And so we used short-term rentals as a way to create new leads to fill those units. This was pivotal in our refinance at Residence at Discovery Square, so a very wise strategic decision. And then we're winding up those short-term rentals in 2025 as things are changing in Rochester with the large construction at the Mayo Clinic. We've converted almost all of those with zero vacancy. That's the nice thing about nightly stays or, 3-night stays is you can just kind of run them all the way up until there's just a turn and then someone moves in for that year-long lease. We kept 19 of them as furnished rentals, so they're no longer like nightly rentals on Airbnb. They're long-term furnished. That might be like 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And we're capturing a $100,000 per year premium because of that differential that we're able to charge for furnished units. So continuing to get a really staggering return on investment from all of those furnishings and linens and all of those
Those are
sorts
more
of things.
profitable than the STRs were in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So pleased with how that went. I think we had a curiosity if we would keep, maybe even like 10% of our entire portfolio as a short-term rental portfolio, kind of in perpetuity. Maybe after Mayo's done with their construction, which is, 5-7 years from now, when you're spending $5 billion, it takes years to build that. Maybe we bring this part of the business back, but for right now in the landscape in Rochester, it doesn't make sense, and we're having so much success on the long-term rental side. So pleased with that.
Secure Freedom Fund, it's growing quickly. We just closed on Commerce Drive, Rainbow Plaza. We've got Essex Park under contract. If you haven't heard about it, you get a 10% fixed rate of return. So it's kind of like a barbell or a nice complement to our fund 1 through 4 structure. You can check out more information at securefreedomfund.com. Buying lots of multifamily, single family homes. And we've got lots in the hopper right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, very excited about Essex. There's another slide about Essex, just has all the numbers there. 288 units, 2.18% HUD loan assumption, $41 million purchase price. We'll have about a $16 million raise, and I anticipate that we'll open the Secure Freedom Fund maybe in about 8 weeks or so for this raise. So excited about that. Just cross your fingers that HUD gets their paperwork done as quickly as possible.
And the toughest transition, one of our finest hours here for Meadow Park. We've got some tough photos to share with you here, so you can check out these photos if you're just listening in podcast mode. But we bought this for $4 million in April. We've spent $300,000 on renovations last month. So we are pouring into this asset at a breakneck pace. This is a 90-unit community, and it has 110 storage units. We just launched our first self-storage facility. You can go to meadowparkselfstorage.com or something right now. We need to get a Google Maps link out there so people can give us some reviews or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's a fun thing for us to experiment with. Did a huge turnaround, to give you some perspective here. We spent $20,000 just on pest remediation, some really, kind of lovely newspaper articles about us and just the incredible value that we're creating in this community, where there was daily visits from fire, EMS, police. We showed up doing due diligence one day, and there's fire engine, the whole parade in the parking lot. We go talk to the management who's in the office, and we're like, what's going on out there? Like the fire, they're like, oh yeah, they're here every day. They just show up, sirens going, and so just an incredible asset to the community that we're creating here. Fun picture of me with my chainsaw, doing some tree work. There's a ton of dead trees that need to come down, and I just figured owner with a chainsaw was the kind of energy that the property needed.
There's a before and after.
There's a before and after.
Yeah.
Of the kitchens. So just a staggering transformation in this particular community. This is kind of a tough photo here, but this is a burn unit, a near fatal fire in a unit. You can see there's a melted child's crib, and just the whole unit is completely destroyed, and then some after photos. So just a staggering transformation we were able to make happen.
And that unit was in that condition, that burnt condition for about 18 months prior to our acquisition, and the prior ownership group just
Yeah.
did not have the resources to
Yeah.
bring to bear to even remove the burnt mattresses and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And this was very high on our priority list for safety, for sending a message to the city that we were very serious about taking very good care of that asset. And now it looks like new construction, and it's very exciting. As I said earlier, we'll do a whole webinar just about Meadow Park, not as part of a quarterly update, just its own standalone webinar because it has been such a transformation. Here's the hallway before and after.
So striking.
New flooring, new paint,
New lighting. You can see there's about 100 times more light. We didn't. There's no filters here. This is what it looked and felt like to walk into this apartment building.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you want to see all of that in real life, come to Rochester for Real Estate Real Life. You like that?
Yeah.
People love to see these things, right? There's something about seeing them on Zoom. There's something very, very special about walking these buildings, whether you're an investor and you're seeing how your money is being used, you're considering investing, you want to take these lessons back to your own portfolio, whatever it is, you can come and see, touch, and feel these assets. We spend a whole day on a bus touring the portfolio. Let's talk about Fund 4. This is our newest of our legacy funds, closed summer of last year. $12 million fund. It has finished acquiring assets. It's in what's called the stabilization phase. It owns Stonehaven Apartments, half of Georgetown Townhomes, and half of Boulder Ridge. And the headline for Stonehaven Apartments is that we finished the construction. We got our certificate of occupancy 2 weeks ahead of schedule, right? And every day in new construction is money, right? Because if you don't have a certificate of occupancy, you can't generate revenue. So we got our certificate of occupancy on the last day of the month, and we had people moving in on the first day of the month. So proud of Tyler, our director of construction. So proud of Justin, our director of growth that manages our leasing team. It is a lot of effort to manage dozens of leases with people to say, we think we're going to be able to move you in on June 1st, but we're not certain. We're going to be in close communication. One way or another, we're going to take care of you. We've got some of these short-term rentals we can put you in. And then that we were able to move all of those folks in on June 1st was a huge win for everybody. We finished $400,000 under budget. That's exciting. That's another testament to Tyler and his work, the value engineering, to our builder, Scott Mose. The ground or the ribbon cutting was just extraordinarily love fest to say it's hard to build something and at any time. It's really hard to build something right now. Nick and I are just a small piece of the puzzle, right? We're the quarterbacks. We get to bring the team together. We had a phenomenal team and everybody pulled their weight and was able to create, staggering success, period. Staggering success in 2025. That's like all caps. Only 4 units left to lease out of 56.
Incredible.
So I anticipate those will be leased, in the next couple of weeks. We have lease up rental rates, which is common with a new construction building, but we've not had to do any free rent concessions. So excited about Stonehaven Townhomes. There's our ribbon cutting. It was just a beautiful day. Very excited about that. The groundbreaking was part of Real Estate Real Life last year. So it's neat to kind of see that come full circle.
Yeah.
You want to do Fund 3?
Sure. A couple of quick updates on a few highlights here. So we can skip forward a couple slides. So Georgetown Townhomes. This is off to a running start. We're cash flow positive despite doing a huge amount of renovations. We've renovated over 30 units in less than a year. And so being able to renovate 30 townhomes but stay cash flow positive, absolutely incredible. We've completed our gas meter split out that's going to save, we estimate, about $25,000 a year. We were able to realize a very significant reduction in our property taxes on this particular property for various reasons. This is our highest renewal rate property in the portfolio by a margin. It's about a 76% renewal rate. Just an incredible renewal rate on this particular asset. And there are 0 vacant units we can lease today. So, I mean, this is like a mic drop kind of thing here.
Yeah. Something that's important to note for those of you still on our live call or listening on the replay, when we talked about the headwinds in the beginning, that's kind of generalities in the whole market. That does not mean to say for like property taxes, that property taxes are going up on every single asset, right?
Yep.
We are having wins across the portfolio. We're having some beatings too. Like, let's be clear. This property, because it's an affordable community, there's a program called 4D, and we were able to get property taxes reduced. So there's still a lot of wins despite those headwinds. Boulder Ridge closed in Q1 of 2025. I have to admit, it took forever for the HUD loan assumption to go through, and I was beating my head against the wall. And maybe it was all meant to be because it closed like literally within days of now being eligible for 100% bonus depreciation. And the interesting thing was our site manager, Dusty, had been on site for months before we were closing. So we essentially had kind of quasi ownership of it. We were taking care of it. So it all kind of worked out, really beautifully. And it will now qualify for that 100% bonus depreciation. We have 4 staff members taking care of this site. Very strong leasing performance, 0 vacant units that we can lease right now. We've finished 20 renovations. These are huge units, huge units. Boulder Ridge was built by a single family home builder. So even though it's townhomes and apartments, he kind of built it to single family home standards, which means the units are very, very large. And we're achieving our pro forma rents.
We've already exceeded it. It's
Exceeding them.
crazy that we've owned this thing for, a few months, and we've already gone from 1775 to 2080 on those 3-bed units. Yeah.
Yeah. Bayswater is an asset in Tacoma. We're working on a large exterior renovation there, doing some heavy renovations on one of the units. And then the big thing for Bayswater is just holding it. The LURA, which is the land use restriction agreement, expires at the end of this year, and then it will switch into a market rate property. And that's really where the story will get started for Bayswater. So the story here has just been holding it and taking good care of it and waiting for that LURA to
I just
expire.
got a few photos of active there. The painters are literally there right now. You can see kind of the smoke detectors and stuff hanging off the wall, but it looks really nice. We'll have some beautiful before and after photos for you for the next update.
Bay Crest is also in Tacoma. A little bit of a slow process getting permits approved with the city. All of our permits have now been approved, but it was slower than we would have liked. We're actively renovating 5 units, which is a lot because it's a relatively small building. We're painting the entire exterior of this building, so our painters will go from Bayswater over to Bay Crest. And we're cash flow positive on that one, which is good. Uptown Apartments is also in Fund 3.
Hard to keep these things straight.
I know. We closed on this on my birthday of last year.
Yep.
Easy peasy asset. Really just needed some good management improvements. It's a relatively new asset, so we didn't do any renovations to this one.
Just an easy peasy doubling NOI.
I know, Nick. I always minimize your accomplishments.
No big deal. Just doubling NOI in 1 year.
Yeah. So Nick created a situation in conjunction with our team that was easy to go from 223,000 in NOI to 400,000 in about a year. We closed.
The bank said it was impossible. They said they'd give us hundreds of thousands of dollars if somehow we did it, and then 10 months later, they're like, "I'll be damned." You did it.
We had like essentially like an interest reserve, and we're gonna get that interest reserve refunded. So excited about that one. We love these in the portfolio. They really help to balance out the big renovation projects. It helps to kind of smooth out the strengths of our team, right? Our maintenance and construction teams can be over here working on this bucket of assets, and our leasing and operations team can really focus on bringing the value on these more stable assets that don't need renovations. They just need really good management improvements. Getting into our older funds, we're now in Fund 2. This fund is a $30 million fund, closed in December of 2022, completed acquisitions in Q2 of 2023, which was the acquisition of Residence at Discovery Square. And Fund 2 owns 9 assets. It is a very large fund. The investors in that fund have a staggering amount of equity across these 9 assets. One of the biggest assets in Fund 2 is Tanara Villa. That's in Tacoma, and I'll let Nick share the updates there.
Yeah, so this has been one where we also really struggled with permits, and we kind of stalled out 2023 to 2024, and things are just absolutely roaring right now. There's about 8 units that are getting completed, coming out of construction here just in the last 7 days. And just look at that chart for rent growth, absolutely staggering rent growth. So if you look at just a year and a half ago, our average in place rental rate was $1,200 a month. Now it's $1,500. We just got our first lease at $1,945 a month. So if you go back to January 2023, which was, we bought it in fall of 2022, and I think in place rent was below $1,100. I think it was like $1,050. Ladies and gentlemen, we have doubled rent at this property. Like, there's just not a lot of, that's just such an unheard of thing to achieve. So just this asset, it took forever to really get the machine going, but it is on a tear. It's doing really well right this second.
Yeah. Kensington and Lauriston is also in Tacoma. Construction is 100% complete. If you can grab your phone, grab your laptop, and you're in a safe place where you can take a look, guys, look at this building.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. We used a completely different style than we usually do, different cabinets, different pools. We use dark trim. This is what Meadow Park looks like. So we tested this completely different, sort of more fashion forward look at Kensington and Lauriston, brought some of these elements into Stonehaven Apartments, and then really are implementing a lot of this at Meadow Park, right? If you have to paint the trim, you choose to paint it white or more of that dark gray. We're choosing to go that dark gray, which just really pops and it looks amazing. We finished this on schedule and a little bit ahead of budget, and then we were also able to take care of some CapEx improvements like electrical and fire upgrades, which are important for just maintaining the overall value of the property for years and years to come. We've just a few more slides to go, guys. Thanks for hanging
So like
with us.
90% attendance. It's
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah, we appreciate it. Fund one.
Yeah, so just want to share an update on Rochester Homes Fund One. This is just a silent winner here. And this is kind of the story of the current state of affairs. It's not huge cash flow on Rochester Homes Fund One, but incredible appreciation. So we added up the value of single family homes. It's quite knowable, compared to apartment buildings because there's so many comparable sales. So we actually went through every single property and added up the value delta versus a year ago, and we picked up $333,000 just in organic appreciations. That's not including debt pay down or anything like that. So just incredible appreciation. This has been a very successful single family portfolio, and we're just it's another quiet winner.
Yeah. You want to do our summary slide?
Absolutely. So in case you missed any of these bullet points, we've had the best acquisitions quarter in the history of our company. We've got 500 units in flight right now in Secure Freedom Fund. This will be the best acquisitions year in the history of the company by a margin. I added up and we've had 42% revenue growth in the last 12 months. So for, usually when you're getting to that, third of $1 billion level,
Maybe that's when I feel like we're running against the wind.
It's a lot of growth. I mean,
The days are long.
now is a great opportunity to buy for sure. We're so happy with the position we're in here. So we're taking these financial headwinds head on and just being honest with ourselves, with our team, with y'all about where we're at. I love that we're paying 1/8 of what our competition is paying for insurance, but our costs are going up, and we're just tackling those costs head on. We've had an 8% rent growth just on renewals alone. So that's not renovations or anything like that, just on renewals alone. So staggering improvement financially throughout the portfolio, and just continuing to focus on optimizing our expenses, and overall things are going extraordinarily well. I'm guessing we're performing in the top 5% or 3% of all real estate private equity funds in the United States right now. I feel like we have some results that we can be incredibly proud of.
Yeah. We always have managed everything that we own, all the way back to our very first single family home, our very first investment. And a lot of that just comes from, Nick and I's personalities. We're very ownership oriented, believing that like the buck stops here, those sorts of things. And I'm just so grateful that we're doing that. Because again, when times are easy, like your property manager can just deliver outcomes for you. They can lease units, costs are low, labor strong, all of those sorts of things. But when things are tough, if you have that extra layer, right, and you have to kind of crack the whip on your property manager, you lose a lot of control. I also think that in our industry, it gives people a lot of places to hide. Like, oh, well, my property manager is not getting the outcomes.
I fired my property manager and hired a better one.
Well, we are the property manager. So like, this is it.
The buck stops here.
And it's principally Nick. Like, I want to make sure I'm giving credit where credit's due. I do most of our communication with our investors. I love being in relationship with all of you, taking care of you alongside Rachel. And Nick manages our team of all of our property managers, operations, leasing, maintenance, construction. And I'm so glad we're doing that so that when times are tough, we can choose, which knobs we turn and what we focus on, and drive the growth to the portfolio that we want to drive. That is it for our slides. So thank you for hanging with us to the end, either here live or in the replay. I hope you got a lot of value out of our quarterly update here. Covered a wide range. I think this is like one of our longest. We usually try to keep them to like 75 minutes.
Lots of good stuff to cover.
There's one question that I want to address here, and then if any other questions pop in while I'm answering that, we'll answer those questions as well. Otherwise, we'll wrap the live call after that. But as always, you can just email us, nick@blackswanteam.com, Elaine@blackswanteam.com, Rachel@blackswanteam.com, if you have any questions and you weren't able to answer, or you weren't able to to ask them live here on the call. Someone asked, I invested in Fund 4. If Georgetown is cash flow positive, but I'm down 12% on my 2024 K1, please clarify. K1s are not like common sense. They're not like, what you would expect like from a checkbook. And that's because of depreciation. So one of the main benefits of investing in real estate is that it generates paper losses through depreciation, right? We talked all about 100% bonus depreciation coming back, cost segregation studies, bonus and accelerated depreciation. And that means that in the early years, you have a paper loss. And that's what you want because you have a negative number on your K1 and you can carry that forward so that when you have a gain in the future, you're offsetting that. Or if you have, say, a loss from investment A, but maybe investment B, there's a sale and there's a gain, then those click together and there's an offset. So it's possible, and in fact, almost certainly likely, that something can be cash flow positive, can be growing in equity, all of those sorts of things. And the K1 reflects the depreciation, so it's negative. That doesn't mean that there's been a loss. That doesn't mean that there's been a loss in value or anything like that. That just comes from how depreciation is reflected on the K1. There's a really good video that our CPA, Kaylin Deaver, did, I think a year ago, but the K1 is, it's a static form year to year. You can find that on YouTube. You can search for our channel, Black Swan Real Estate, and then once you're in our channel, search for K1 and you'll find that video. And she walks through kind of all of the boxes and what they mean and how the numbers flow through. And it's pretty short video. I think it's maybe like 20 minutes and it's really impactful. So that can be helpful for people. I don't see any other questions that came in during that time. Anything you want to say as we wrap up?
No, this has been a great time together. It's such an honor and a privilege to serve everyone. We appreciate you being with us on this call. Not a lot of groups, go live with their investors. We love the chance to do live Q&A and interact with you all. And
we wore red today.
Yeah, we accidentally color coordinated again.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Please join us for our next Community Power Hour. Rachel will share about that. I believe we have the date set and the topic set. We'd love to have you join us for Real Estate Real Life, either here in person in Rochester or that virtual option is amazing. September 12th and 13th, you're able to join us right live, like right as the time goes. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the recordings are made available to all of our ticket types. If you need anything in the meantime, you know how to reach out. If you want to put your name on the wait list for Secure Freedom Fund, you can do that at securefreedomfund.com. Right there at securefreedomfund.com, you can also block a time on our calendars if you want to have a call. Whatever you guys need, we're here for you. We hope you got a lot out of this quarterly update, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.